Hello and welcome to the PublishU podcast, where we explore the real-life stories of authors from around the world. Today we are talking to Matthew Kimpton-Smith, who has written a book called Second Chance. Matthew, welcome. It's great to have you with us.
Morning, Matt. Thank you very much.
So where in the world are you, Matthew?
I'm currently in Anglesey,
Where's
Anglesey, in a place called Rossniger.
And where's Rossniger?
It's on the west coast of Anglesey, and it's been a holiday destination since I was a very young boy in the early 70s.
And is that in Australia, South Africa? Where in the world is it?
It's North Wales.
There we go. Well, I knew that, but some people listening
not that far away from home, which is Cheshire in the northwest of England.
Very good. Matthew, I understand you run a family business. Tell us a little bit about your story, your working story.
It's well, mum and dad started the business TexKimp, Tex for Techstars and Kimp for Kimpton, which was mum's maiden name.
Yeah.
In making machines for unwinding fibres. And my grandfather had a business that provided machines for the Lancashire cotton industry. That they struggled in with the change of, manufacturing in the UK and jobs going overseas and unions and everything in the late 60s, early 70s. And my parents set up by themselves at home in my bedroom with the statement of, we will employ absolutely nobody that we don't need to if we can get the work done through subcontract. So we have a subcontract model. We sell machines globally, and it's brilliant. And I joined them in the early 90s.
And now run the business.
I did run the business. I ran the business until 7 years ago.
What happened 7 years ago?
7 years ago, so I've been told, I was out cycling with the local group Frodsham Wheelers.
So were you a serious cycler, Matthew? Was this just a pedestrian weekend cycle, or were you one of these road racers?
Probably one of the road racers. But I'm a bit large to be a serious cyclist, but I love it. And I was out cycling. I think it was about a 70-miler, so regular sort of Saturday morning jaunt. And on the way back, so cycling into a place called Knutsford, which was my hometown where I was sort of brought up, I just keeled over. And
you weren't hit by anything, or?
No, it wasn't hit by anybody. We were just going down the middle of one of the main roads into town, and apparently I just went straight over, and I had a cardiac arrest. And as I've learned, a cardiac arrest is where your heart just stops, and from that moment on, nothing's working. You're effectively dead, and seconds count. And the Lord had a plan for me, and I'm still here.
Wow. So what happened? I presume all your mates stopped to see what was happening, and they called the ambulance. What happened next?
Mates stopped to see what was happening, but the saving grace, the Lord's plan, I believe, was the guy driving towards me who saw me fall was a consultant anaesthetist, and he said it was obvious that it wasn't a cycling accident. There was something seriously wrong. So he pulled over. He was going to play golf with his 11-year-old son. And basically he helped them deal with the situation, and I got CPR. They got a paramedic to me. They got the defib on me, and I got kick-started back into life eventually. I believe it didn't happen first time. And then they got an air ambulance and shot me off to hospital.
My goodness. So a near-death experience? Is that what you'd call it?
I would essentially say a death experience.
Gosh. And so what's happened since then, Matthew?
It was 7 years ago in May, so it was May 2016 it happened. They have been the most, wonderful but challenging years, and the last 6 months, Matt, have actually been the hardest of the 7 years.
Really? And why is that, Matthew?
Often the reaction to, you've had a cardiac arrest, it's a heart problem. And whilst, yes, that is an issue, the big issue has been the brain injury. And the brain injury from the lack of oxygen when my heart wasn't pumping around has been severe, to the point where I couldn't make a decision. When I first came round, I couldn't make a decision, for example, between a cup of tea or coffee. How do you choose if someone says, would you like a cup of tea or coffee? How do you make that choice? I couldn't do that. And so everything from there was just, let's say, really difficult. I also lost my memory 100% back to 2010 and about 80% back to 2000. And then it does actually get better. So the late 70s, early 80s are probably clearer than they would be. But I've got that big window. And whilst I can remake those connections, the short-term memory's been a real problem. So keeping those connections has been very, very difficult, which, well, say for me, initially wasn't a problem at all. Frustrating for everyone around me, but I didn't really care, because just being alive was wonderful.
Yeah,
but what
absolutely.
I found, why the last few 7 months, 6-7 months have been the hardest, is as I continually get better, if that's the line, if up here is the line you want to be or should be operating at, when you're down here, this is irrelevant. But as you get closer over time, this starts to come into focus.
Yeah.
And the gap becomes, we'll say, tangible. And it's the frustration of not quite being where you want to be, not quite being able to do what you think and you could. And it's great. I'm still improving measurably every 2-3 months.
Yeah. So you've not gone back to running the family business as you were?
No, I've not gone back to running it at all. And I've made the conscious decision now that I'm going to learn to be the best owner I can be, and support and help the team that are running the business. I've got 2 businesses.
Yeah.
Running both the businesses to be the best they can be.
Fantastic. And how else has the accident of 7 years ago changed your life, Matthew? You talk about changing memory, you talk about changing the way that you're being a business owner rather than running the business. How else has it impacted you in a positive way?
I can't really think of anything that's been negative, Matt. It's in a positive way. I was 49 when it happened, and I was say tearing on with life. I was running a business, got a family, 4 kids. I was trying to play sport. I was just busy and doing lots, and it's forced me to stop. And there was no choice. I suddenly had to stop and take a real look at life and what's important. And the most basic thing, but it hits me every morning, is I get to wake up and go and make a cup of tea for my wife. And just the fact that I've woken up, I can go downstairs, I can make a cup of tea, and all those sort of little basic things, but just being able to make a cup of tea, just being able to carry a teacup that's full without spilling it, it's just such a huge blessing. And I just go, wow. And to start my day like that, I say every day, is just wonderful.
Wow. That is incredible. So many of us take those little things. I mean, I don't like cups of tea myself. I like a good coffee, good cappuccino. But so we just take for granted we can pop downstairs and get one, don't we? And it's incredible. So Matthew, you've actually written a book about your story. When did you decide that you wanted to write a book about what's happened to you?
Just over a year ago.
What was the prod? What was it that kind of pushed you over the edge to do it?
Well, over say the first 5-6 years, many people had said, "Oh, you need to write about this. You need to," and I just wasn't interested.
Yeah.
It was like life was just for enjoying and being there. And then I went on a Faith in Business conference retreat in Cambridge, and I'm a Christian. I've been a Christian since the early 90s, and I went on this retreat, and 3 different people at that retreat said, "You need to write a book about this, and you need to talk to Matt Bird." I'd never heard of Matt Bird. But just the fact that 3 independent people all said the name Matt Bird, came off the retreat, Googled Matt Bird, and signed up for the next course, which was, I think, started mid-July last year.
Amazing. So
Yeah.
I mean, it was a pleasure having you on the Writing My Book course. You asked lots of great questions and still do it. I love that. What was it what was it about the course that enabled you to write your book, would you say? What was most helpful?
Well, I say everything. You can. Two or three things stand out for me. The first one was, I think it was the first session, you said, very clearly, this is your book. So you've got to write your book. But you also said that, and I might have the numbers wrong, but it was something like, if you do exactly what's laid out in this course, you've got a 90-odd% chance of finishing your book. If you decide to do it your way, that's absolutely fine. It's your book, but you've got less than a 40% chance of finishing your book. And being, 1, clueless, but 2, we'll say fairly good at taking instructions. If you think, well, I'm on a course, I'm going to an expert, so I'll do what I'm told. So I decided then I would just do exactly what you said and not try and be clever, not think I knew better. And that was probably the most significant decision I made for the whole course. And the second one was, when we started writing, you said, do not edit until you've finished.
Yes.
And the temptation to play around with your book and muck around and go back was huge. But again, you'd given the clear instruction, do not edit till you've finished. So I did what I was told and didn't edit till I finished.
Well done.
But I got a book finished.
It's amazing.
And when I look back through all the stages, and I look at, we had Zoom meetings and the WhatsApp group that we were part of, and it was brilliant. But the discussions, I don't know how part of them you were, but the discussions among sort of the participant Muppets that were doing it was effectively a lot of thinking, we have to do it our way. We have to start writing earlier. We can't. And what I found you'd given me, and I didn't realize actually until I was actually doing the editing afterwards, you built a structure, and that structure allowed us to write the book. So I liken it to building a house. You laid out the plans, you dug the foundations with us, and when we actually came to build the house, we had the plan, we had the foundations at the right depth in the right places. So all we then had to do was put the bricks on the roof and the window and all that stuff. But it was simple. But if you'd just given us the building materials and said, go build a house, we'd have started making all sorts of a mess. And, the course for me allowed me to write a book. There's no way I'd have got anywhere near without it.
Yeah. Well done, Matthew. And it's great to hear that feedback. You've not told me that before. Not all of that anyway. So it's lovely to hear. So now your book is globally published, Matthew. What is your highest hope for what your book achieves? It's called Second Chance because, of course, you were given a second chance. What's the book all about? It obviously tells your story.
It tells my story, but it's about trying to help anybody, with the learning I've had. So they don't have to go through what I went through to get the learning. It's to share the experience. My hope for it is, even if one person picks up that book and reads one page and that page helps them, then wow, the book's achieved everything I want it to achieve. I feel that my job was to write the book as best I can.
Yeah.
Effectively, the Lord then it's in His hands as to who picks it up, whether they read it. My job's just to get the book into people's hands.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's my hope.
Yeah. And I'm really excited about your book being out there now, Matthew, because I can see the change of perspective that your near-death experience, or your death experience, as you called it, has had upon you. It's completely changed your outlook on life and your gratitude for even the smallest things. And my hope for your book is that it will do that for others, that other people won't need a near-death experience, but reading your story will help us all be more grateful for the little things in life as well as the big things. And I think that is really, really exciting. So Matthew, I want to thank you for being with us today. And I want to thank you guys for listening to the PublishU podcast, featuring the real life stories of authors from around the world. If you're interested in becoming an author like Matthew, please visit the website, www.publishu.com. And if you like this broadcast, make sure you subscribe for more. Goodbye. Thank you so much, Matthew. We'll see you all soon.
Thank you.